I'm here with Martin Jessen. Martin, how are you, my old friend?
I'm very good. Everything is good. Springtime here in San Francisco, so this is good.
Yeah, it is good, and the weather's changing. There is hope in the air with the vaccine. There's a lot of good things happening economically, and HR has gone through a significant transition, of course, over the past years, taking a leadership role and strategizing on how to address the response to COVID, and also look out for employee well-being and still try and maintain engagement and things like that. And you have been helping companies over the years and certainly over the past year navigate this. So if you would you please introduce yourself and a little about what you're going to be talking about today?
Yes, with pleasure. So my name is Martin Jessen. I'm the founder of Sherpa HR, which is a small company that is helping HR teams to develop their strategic capabilities. Okay, So I'm half Danish, half German. If you're wondering about my accent, I live here in San Francisco with my family, and I've been working in two big companies, IBM and Schneider Electric, in all kinds of human resource roles, both business partner roles, but also functional roles. And there in those functional roles, touching the topics of learning and development, strategic workforce planning, workforce management, and talent development. And yeah, so last year I kind of launched into the project here with developing strategic HR capabilities, and yeah, I'm looking forward to share some findings around that here in your forum and starting a discussion, and getting some feedback from the audience, hopefully as well.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've been long impressed by you have brought learning together, capability building with workforce planning. And this has been a struggle for most organizations forever. So the idea that, oh gosh, we're going to develop people for future roles, and in many cases we don't know what those roles are yet, and what is HR's, not only learnings but HR's role to help have conversations about what the work is going to be, how the organization is actually going to do that work, understanding individual capacity as well as capability. So can you speak to how you think about, before you get into the muscles, because I know you have that to talk about, but just as a starting point, learning with workforce planning, how do you see those working together?
So first of all, workforce planning in general is a very daunting task for organizations because it's so vast. You can put in so many different topics here. And one of the big lessons learned that I had working on it, both from an expert in workforce planning, but also as an HR business partner and leading learning, is that you have to really focus on the business problems at hand. I think that is the key, that is the North Star. That is what gets the attention of the business and the rest of the HR function to work on this topic of trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. I think the connection between learning and workforce planning is when you kind of do your analysis, and many companies figure out, okay, we have some certain needs, we have talent needs, and they quickly come to realize many other companies have those same needs, which kind of then puts you into the middle of the talent war for very scarce resources, and there then the attention switches over to say, what can we do to develop those competencies and skills of the future ourselves, rather than relying on trying to compete in the markets, which is ruthless right now. I think the case for learning, working closely together with strategic workforce planning, or the idea of workforce planning, is to map out some possible scenarios on how you can develop your people yourself to the needs and the competitiveness that you're looking for in the future. Yeah. So I think that's a big case for me. Yeah.
And as you're talking, I see a good segue into the strategic HR muscles that you're going to speak to, because what you just described, to use my language, is a process-centric approach where you have the discussion first and have the skills to have the discussion, knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to empathize. Is that where you see a gap in your experience and in other organizations that you've served?
Yes, and obviously the HR team is in the center of that discussion. Mm-hmm. They need to stimulate that discussion. They need to make that discussion happening, and we as a function come from a history of being quite operational and transactional. And that conversation that I think we should be seeking is obviously a strategic conversation, and that's quite a daunting task. Yeah, it's intimidating to launch yourself into that discussion, and I think yes, there is a need for all of us in HR to step up in that conversation with the business, and I think we can all refine our skills, work on our competencies and our abilities to have that conversation, and even more importantly, also for the more senior people of us to develop others to be able to step up to that conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Sherpa HR is all about, is to kind of make that real. Yeah, going from this implicit, intuitive thing of being strategic to making it more explicit, and to really be able to coach people on how to do that.
Yeah. Well, we'll love it. And so I'll get out of your way. I know you have some visuals to share, and so I'm going to disappear for a minute, then come back, and we'll have a discussion about it. Sound good?
Yes, that sounds perfect. Let me share my screen here. So here's the presentation. So again, really looking forward to take you through this little presentation on what I have found about what it means to be strategic in HR. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to just explore why this is important. Yeah, so we've been discussing that a little bit here with Al, and then I really want to share my findings of what I found in terms of what it means to be strategic HR. We came up with a bit of a success profile around it, which hopefully describes what it means, what our North Star could be in terms of being strategic, and also some ideas on how we all can develop our strategic muscles. Okay, so I think there are really three big reasons for why it is a good idea to work on strategic capabilities. Number one reason for me is the business is asking for it, and I got this little photo here from when I was an HR business partner for one of the divisions that I worked in. Okay. And this was actually a workshop where we worked on the strategy for that division. And again, back to what we discussed with Al, is this is a very intimidating situation to play a role in that conversation. Okay. Just a week before that meeting, I actually was just 3 months into my role, and the business leader actually came to me and said, Martin, your first 3 months were great, but it's all been about HR campaigns, HR processes. We did the salary plan, we did the bonus payments and so forth. You've been doing a good job on the transactional side, but I really need you to step up on the strategic side. Yeah. So, and I said, oh, wow, yes, exciting. I want to do this, and I want to kind of dig into this. And he came from a place where he could see that his success in the business was very much dependent on the talent that we were able to build within his organization, within his business, and that the HR team needed to really support him on that feature. Okay, so and I think there are more and more demands from the businesses on us as a HR function to really step up on that conversation, and to really step into helping companies or organizations with their transformations. I'm sure you've heard about the studies from McKinsey and BCG who kind of found 70% of major transformations are actually failing. Okay, and those failures, when they are digging into the root causes, there are obviously numerous root causes, but many of those root causes are going back to the people agenda. Yeah, there's the culture, the leadership capabilities and alignment. There is the talent gaps that we mentioned earlier. There are competency gaps that are really the root causes for why those transformations are failing. So reason number one, the businesses are asking for us and we need to step up. Then there's the macro environment that we find ourselves in. As Al mentioned earlier, we're just hopefully coming out of the pandemic. And I think we've been catapulted into the future of work here, and obviously, again, organizations are looking to us as a function to kind of shape the way forward on how the future of work is going to look like. And we still have, and we had that before the pandemic, we have a huge talent shortage, and there is a very big fight around the critical talents that you need to deliver on the strategies in the organizations that we are supporting. Okay, the third reason for me is a personal one. I think the work of being strategic is absolutely exciting. It's stimulating. It's interesting. And when you're doing it well, I think the value that you see coming out of this work is absolutely phenomenal. Okay, so those are three reasons, and I'm sure there are many other reasons for us being strategic in HR, but those are kind of the three reasons that I could think of. Okay, let me show you a little bit around what we found here in terms of what it means to be strategic in HR. I took some time last year during the pandemic to do a number of interviews with HR leaders, with CHROs, HR VPs, but also with some strategic thinking experts to get different perspectives, and also business leaders, by the way, to get different perspectives of what it means to be strategic in HR. What are the expectations to us in terms of strategic? And the inputs I got were actually very holistic, which surprised me. Yeah, people obviously talked about business acumen, they talked about analytical capabilities, but there were lots of different inputs in terms of accountability around how we engage with stakeholders, but also about our own perception of our role and so forth, that kind of made up that kind of profile of what it means to be strategic. By the way, I used the expression muscles because it kind of took us out of the very narrow definitions of skills, of competencies. So the expression muscles gave us a broad approach to how to describe that. Okay, let me go a little bit into more detail of what those different muscles mean. So we have the engage muscle, and really that is about how you engage with your stakeholders, how you engage with your audience, how you collaborate, how you show up at that table where the strategic conversation is happening. Without the engage muscle, it is difficult to really have impact. Yeah, you might have a fantastic analysis, you might have beautiful solutions that you want to bring across. If you're not able to put yourselves into the shoes of your audience, of your stakeholders, and try and influence your themes in the right direction, it is difficult to have that impact. Okay. And the sense muscle is about how you're capturing signals, what trends there are out there, what sort of feedback you're getting internally in the organization, but also a good understanding of what the business problems are that the business needs to solve to be competitive in the future of the business. Okay, so the sense muscle is very critical in terms of giving your work direction, a sense for situation. The classical one is you're presenting a beautiful approach to monitor your attrition, but the business doesn't have any attrition problems. Okay, so that's where your sense muscle kicks in to give you a sense for situations and so forth. The think muscle is really a muscle that makes you not jump to solutions, but that makes you to step back, to look at the situation, to analyze data, to understand the systems, trying to connect the dots, and coming up with a diagnosis of the root causes of the business problems that you're trying to solve. So this is your step back muscle to kind of get an overview of the situation. We'll get back to that muscle a little bit later. The create muscle is we're mobilizing the collective genius of your teams, of the function, but also of the business to really find the right solutions that are really addressing the root causes of your business problems, that are helping you to really come up with the solutions that have an impact on the business problems that you're trying to solve. Okay. And there are no good solutions if you can't execute on them. So you have to push for decision making, you have to push for execution, you have to overcome barriers and resistance and really get to those sustainable results. Okay. And then finally, last but not least, it's your feel muscle. This is your self-awareness. How do you regulate your emotions in situations that are tense? How are you in sync with the decisions that you're trying to influence from your values and beliefs point of view? So the feel muscle is quite critical in this overall success profile in terms of being strategic in HR. This is where your authenticity comes out, or the lack of the same, So the feel muscle is very critical. Let me go a little bit deeper with some of those muscles, and I'm going to share some, let's say, some nuggets from the learning experience that we've designed at Sherpa HR to help people to work those different muscles. Okay, so the first one, and I think this is especially interesting to the people analytics community, but also in general to the whole HR community, is the think muscle. Okay, this is where the analytics skills are sitting and so forth. And I think the classic problem that we are suffering in our function is we have a tendency to jump to solutions, not only us as a function, but also our businesses. So our businesses, for example, have that tendency to say, hey, we have an attrition problem, so we need to work on our compensation. This is a classical situation of jumping to solutions, where I think we in HR need to play that role and say, hold on, let's have a thorough analysis of what is going on here. And here's where I really think our mission is to get down to the root cause of the business problems that we're going to solve. And the approach that we're trying to follow in our boot camp is to really peel the onion to get down to those root causes. So we're trying to look at the symptoms that are describing the business problem. We're trying to get different stakeholder perspectives to understand different systems inputs in terms of what is it that is wrong here, different people's inputs in terms of getting different opinions on what the problem is. You try and find the patterns, you make some hypothesis, and that kind of starts to lead you down to the root, that analysis to get to the root causes of the business problem. And finally, that obviously then provides you with the levers that you can pull and push to be able to address those root causes. Okay, so this is something we're doing in our learning experience, is to take the team through real case studies that people bring along to this learning experience, to really look at those different elements, to really understand the root causes of your business problems. Another example is the sense muscle, and here it is really about figuring out what are the themes that are on the table today of the business, yeah, and to develop some consciousness about what is it that makes it to the table and is being discussed with the business, okay, and maybe kind of trying to reflect on what are the criteria of what it makes, what topics are making it to the table. Then you obviously have the topics that are a little bit outside that table, and there may be a number of topics from an HR's point of view that you want to bring into the table to make sure that we are starting to discuss, that the business is starting to pay attention to it. One good example I had from one of the businesses that I was supporting was probably quite a classical problem, is that I started to detect some toxic behaviors in the organization we were supporting. But I was really struggling with getting some attention to those toxic behaviors. They were kind of ignored. And here I only started to really get attention to the business when I could say, hey, there is zero tolerance with the customers that we are supporting. If they kind of see that we are an organization that is actually having toxic behaviors, they will not do business with us in the future. This is where I started to get the attention of the table, if you like, of the leadership team, to really start, okay, we need to have a zero tolerance policy here on toxic behaviors, and we really need to execute on this. Yeah? This is just a simple example, but what I'd like us to kind of develop is that consciousness of what makes it to the table and how you can work on bringing topics to the table in an effective way by getting the attention of the leadership teams that you're supporting. Okay. The final muscle that I just wanted to kind of give you a little deeper insight on is the engage muscle. And again, what I mentioned earlier, this is the muscle that helps you really navigate the stakeholders that you're trying to influence. I think here it is important that you have a more systematic approach to how you engage with your stakeholders, how you try and understand what is the agenda of the different stakeholders in your team. What is important to them, what is not important to them, what sort of style do they have, and what sort of style do you have when you're engaging with them. I'm asking actually the team to try and do an assessment of trust. What level of trust have you already established or not established? You can see here Salini and Gerda, there I have to still do some work with them in terms of trust, while Deborah and Bob, they are absolutely with me here. Yeah? Another dimension that we are looking at is the HR agenda really important to them, or is it less of a priority? And to what degree do they actually have influence in the organization, and to what degree do they not have influence? And that then allows me to really kind of think through, I have a topic that I want to bring to the table of the strategic conversation. How can I, let's say, work with the stakeholders to really effectively bring those topics to the table? Yeah, so with Bob, I'm co-creating ideas. With the boss, I have to be super crisp. With the Gerda, I need to consult before the announcement is going out. Yeah, so I kind of shape my approach with the team based on what sort of relationship I have established with them, and the understanding I have of being able to put myself into the shoes of others. Okay, so those were kind of 3 deep dives into the different muscles. Now the question is, how do you develop your muscles going forward? And it's really, for those of you who are more senior, you may take it from the perspective how you coach others. I think for all of us, it's also about how we develop and continue to develop our strategic muscles. Okay, for me, it's always, and I think that's my old days of strategic workforce planning. It's important to establish a baseline. Yeah. So I think it's a good idea to try and figure out where you are today. In the business that you are supporting, but also in relation to what you want to do further in your career, and then to try and find out in those different muscles, where do I stand? Where are my strengths? Where are my areas for development? And then to look at the different situations that you find yourself in, and then to reflect on what muscles do I need to use or need to flex in what sort of situations. So if you're new to the role, I think the engage and the sense muscles are very important. Yeah, when you are looking at a business problem, the think muscle is very important to try and step back and understand it. When you are in execution mode, obviously the deliver muscle, but again, the engage muscle are important. When you are in an uncomfortable situation, look at the feel muscle, yeah, and reflect on how you should flex your muscles. Think about how you apply your muscles in those situations, which are very powerful. And that works to do self-reflection, but also obviously to coach others. And of course, Sherpa HR is there to help you to do it in a much more systematic approach, so that you're really able to develop your muscles in a very intentional way going forward. Yeah. So finally, and I'm sure there are other ways of getting that across to you. You can always find us on sherpa-hr.com and learn more about this. So don't hesitate to reach out, and looking forward to the discussion. So Al, that was a quick download here.
Personally, I think it's outstanding. I said this in promoting this session, that it is, for lack of a better word, fun, exciting to see someone who's actually done the work for an extended period of time step back, look at his or her career, connect with others, and address longstanding gaps. That's what I see that you have done. I'll go and take off from our earlier conversation, is that you said that this is intimidating at the very outset when you showed the example of that forum. And I'm going to use my own assumptions here based on my own experience, is that it's intimidating in large part because the conversation can get unwieldy, it can get esoteric. To your earlier point, it might not have immediate relevance or business impact. However, a lot of the decisions that are made or not made have impact to business outcomes. They have impact to culture. They have impact to people's lives. So having a more structured approach to those conversations and being aware of your role to create a safe place to guide those conversations, I think is massively valuable. So yeah, congratulations on what you've achieved. And where I'll land with this is, based on what I just shared, what do you think is a good starting point for someone, listening, whether they be an HR business partner or a CHRO or head of talent or head of recruiting? And the reason I ask is, I have heard time and again, I'm sure you have, we're not there yet. We have other priorities, and workforce planning it's planning. It's down there. It's over there. However, it's right here, and many, don't know it. So, in terms of a starting point, other than engaging you in Sherpa HR, what's a good way to just go from this stuck place, or I don't really need it, we're not there yet, to, okay, we're going to take appropriate action and we're going to bring this to life in our organization?
I'm saying it again and again, and I sound like a broken record, but it is about starting with a solid biz problem, that hopefully already gets some attention in your business, okay? And actually, and there it's about stepping outside your comfort zone and saying, hey, I want to be the one accountable for leading the work on solving this business problem. And again, you should never say that you are the only one who's going to work on it, always as a team. But it's about identifying that business problem and taking it on. I think that's always a good start. And then in terms of trying to figure out which one you want to focus on is maybe to start with the business problems that are a little bit in the area of your experience, where you've already tried and tested some things, which gives you a little bit of credibility and so forth. But I think that critical first step is to get alignment with your organization and saying, hey, let me try and work on that attrition problem that we have in our service center business, as an example, and let me try and work out a solution for us. And that will have an immediate attention from your stakeholders. It is where you can then start to apply your approach in terms of, let me try and analyze what the root causes are. Let me get the team together to come up with solutions and recommendations. Let's engage with the stakeholders to get everybody on board where we are going with this, and then start executing and producing results. So it's kind of this kind of circle. And you play all the different elements here, but it is solving, hopefully, eventually, a business problem that the business truly is suffering. I think that for me is a starting point, and find someone who can help you, to coach you on your thinking, to be a sounding board to you when you're kind of trying to make progress and get over some barriers. I think that's a good way of getting started on this.
Well, you have been an HR business partner for a long time. You've held leadership roles in HR. And you're obviously addressing something that you feel has not been addressed systematically enough. And with being compassionate to, all those you've come across in an HR role and outside, over the years, including yourself, why don't you think this is happening now? Is it just, too many distractions? Is it the lack of a systematic approach? Why is it just not more prevalent, this approach that you're advocating?
I think there are several reasons. I think one is our history as a function. I think, and I apologize if I offend anyone, but our history has been more operational and transactional. This is our bread and butter, and I think it is fair to say, if we don't get our bread and butter right, then no one will listen to us when we try and talk strategy. Because if you can't fix the payroll system, if you can't fix our processes, if you can't help us to scale globally, where everybody is doing in terms of getting our operational side up and running, then no one will listen to us on the strategic side. So I think that's something that's important. I think the second reason is the career path that we have in HR. Are we mixing enough? Are we diverse enough? Do we have people from the business coming into our function that teach us more about the business? Do we mix it with people who are coming through our own function? So I think this diversity of HR teams is maybe also a root cause for why we are not stepping into enough into the area of business strategies and so forth. So I think that's another reason. And the third reason is we have a tendency to jump at topics that look beautiful and shiny, without stepping back and saying, okay, what is really the value to our business with this? Is this really going to solve the core problems? Is this really going to progress our business? Or is it just something cool and nice to have, but it's not really what the business needs, to kind of make that connection between beautiful HR solutions and what really the pain points are of organizations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's historically been, particularly over the last 20 years, with the emergence of HR technologies, improving processes and creating capability that formerly didn't exist. It was the case where we have this solution looking for a problem. So it's a technology first approach as opposed to a process or a business problem first approach. And now you fast forward, I think what Sierra Cedar study said most organizations over, I don't know the actual number, but I think it was 5,000 have an average of 15 HR technology solutions within their organization. And so how do you make sense of all the data that those technologies are generating? What is the problem, to your point, that you're trying to solve? And where I'll land with a question is, who is best suited to solve this problem? So the question there is, what you're talking about, whether it be with workforce planning or just simple problem solving, takes the right people in the room to create the space, to have a clear objective and a means in which to identify the root cause, again, to your language, and in turn find appropriate solutions, to that cause. So can you speak to two things? Number one, who should be in the room, and HR organizing that as opposed to jumping up and down and say, pick me to be table. And number two, just creating the space, holding the space to say, hey, this is going to be an intimidating or sticky discussion, and we're going to take this, to use my longtime friend and a former client, Ann LeCam, who was the head of HR and head of operations or production at Walt Disney Animation Studios, talking about this big hairball. And she's just like, we need to get rid of all that, dust bunnies, all that stuff, and make sense of, what we have. We have to comb it out and understand it. So can you speak to who and then how to create the space?
I think the who obviously again depends on the business problem that you're trying to solve or the initiative that you are launching. For me, there's a timing on the who, and I think the earlier you bring in key stakeholders on getting alignment on what sort of problem you want to solve and how to analyze it and to look at the analysis of root causes and then go to the next step of developing solutions, is to get people along the way, all the way. The earlier you involve key stakeholders, the better you are at getting different perspectives on a problem and getting different kind of points of view. And it also helps you with getting a broader view of what sort of data you need to collect, make those root cause analysis and so forth. So in terms of who, I think obviously decision makers are important. Influencers are important, but also the people who are actually suffering the pain points. So something that I have done in coming up with a solution for certain pain points is to bring in employees and people managers who you feel, hey, they can really, and this is design thing, I think, and in terms of bringing in the end users into those discussions to immediately get their point of views, to really engage them in those discussions and really get their inputs and also their buy-in to kind of go to the steps of solving those problems. performance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the who, yeah. And honestly, we have a smorgasbord of experts that we can bring in, from recruitment, from compensation. Everybody wants to help if they understand their role and what sort of value they can bring to solving big problems. When you present the why and the problem you want to solve, it's easy to inspire people to contribute and get along with.
Yeah. Yeah, I smile because you prompted a memory for me where I'm not going to share the client who it was, but I effectively took a very similar approach to what you advocated, and it related to planning on a survey. And so we juxtaposed the survey data against other key metrics, turnover and productivity and outputs, and we rooted the presentation and associated deliverable with stories. So we did focus groups with certain cohorts of young workers in different departments. So the stories gave it life. And the CEO who was at the head of the long table after I presented, it's probably one of the best professional compliments I ever got. He said, these things usually suck, and this was pretty good. And so, while I was the presenter, there was a team of HR, particularly the CHRO of that particular organization, who frankly guided the process and insisted on getting those stories or getting that data rooted in the actual stories of people. So yeah, I can't support enough, what you're advocating. Yeah. I have a couple more questions, sure. But before we wrap, you mentioned at the outset that you're German, Danish, and you have worked here in the States, but you do have a perspective that is from outside a standard American growing up in this. And I think as I have talked to you, not only today, but in the past, you have a great appreciation for diversity, equity, inclusion, in part because you're a foreigner in a foreign land. And I have a great respect for you, having lived overseas 6+ years myself. It's difficult in many ways. So can you speak to, and I see that in what you're advocating when you talk about empathy and EQ and I think it was sensing or feeling. And so, can you just speak to that particular muscle and why it's so important and critical from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I learned it from my dad. He was selling salmon, and he always told me, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the other people when you want to achieve something. So I think that one stuck with me, and I think that piece is really important. It comes from a curiosity about others. Yeah, it comes from a curiosity of where people come from, what their agendas are, what they like, what they don't like, and trying to have an empathy for that and reconciling that with your own values, with your own beliefs, with your own style. And for me, it's this puzzle to try and put this together so that you bring it together, you bring a very diverse team together to achieve something that we have as a common goal. Yeah, and for me, it's exciting to try and attempt that. And I think the outcomes when you're kind of getting into, okay, what are the ideas we are generating here, are so much richer. Yeah, I mean, when you're working with a diverse team with different perspectives, with different ideas, the end product is this 1 + 1 is 5. Yeah, whatever it is, and this is a very on data based kind of statement, but from experience, I absolutely am convinced of that diversity produces more beautiful things. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely key.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and thank you, for sharing that, because I think something, particularly over the happenings of the past year here in America and around the world, is that there is a desire to do better, and it invites the question how. I think there's a lot of books, there's videos, there's podcasts and things like that where people have been educating themselves, and then they have to go in and engage in real life. And over the past year, it's largely been over a screen and microphone. Hopefully very soon, again, it's going to be in person. And so are we going to come back, different? And to be different, correct me if I'm wrong in your view, it takes practice. And what I see you doing is offer a framework to practice, to be better, to stay in curiosity more, to find the root causes, to explore possibilities. And I certainly celebrate, that approach that you're advocating. So, thank you for doing what you do. As wrap up, can you just explain a little bit more about your boot camp and the array of services that you're offering? Because as you and I talked about it before, I was like, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So do you mind just giving an overview?
Yeah, absolutely. With pleasure. So it's actually a very simple solution that stands on two legs. Yeah. One solution is about coaching for individuals. So if you are an HR leader, if you're an HR business partner, and you sit there and you got the message that, hey, you have to be a bit more strategic. We are helping individuals with kind of navigating that challenge and really developing some muscles to be more strategic with the business. The other element is learning experiences for teams. So if you are in an organization, you have an HR team, and you want to, as a team, step up to be more of a trusted strategic advisor to the business. We have this learning experience where we start with self-assessments. We do stakeholder interviews to really have a very solid baseline on where the team is today and where each individual is today. And then we go into those boot camps that you're mentioning, where we are really taking muscle by muscle and we are learning about techniques, concepts, and then we are exercising our muscles on our own case studies, on our own business problems, okay? To have a safe space, but where you're really trying to work on your muscles, to work on your own business problems. And then afterwards, we have a phase of 3 months where you're then doing coaching with us to really ensure that you are applying what you have learned. Yeah. So that you really can see how you are forming new habits on being more strategic, and that you are really stepping up on becoming that trusted advisor. Okay, so those are the two elements that we are offering at Sherpa HR, and you can find more info on this on our web. Okay?
Well, I mean, again, I'll say it. I love what you're doing. I love how you're doing it, the approach, the fact that you're offering a safe place to practice, build constructive habits. I mean, the world needs it. And so, again, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being my guest today. And any closing comments as we wrap?
Looking forward to see everybody in the field, yeah, and let's start this discussion on how we move the needle on this thing.
Yeah, well, let's make it happen. Martin, again, thank you. You be well, and we'll see you soon, yeah?
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.